Hey guys, welcome to my very first YouTube video. You can call me yommor, and I was thinking that today it might be fun if I told you some stupid stories from when I was a child. So the first story is from when I was about 7 years old. I used to have this pet cat that I freaking loved, but for some reason she hated me, and every time I tried to approach her to pat her, she'd scratch me really bad and the whole encounter would just end up in a pool of blood and tears. Eventually, as time passed, I started to get the idea that maybe trying to pat her on the head wasn't such a good idea. But I still had that really strong longing to have like an animal companion, I guess. So one day I remember looking out into my backyard and having like the biggest brain idea ever. You know how there are some things that you learn by yourself as a kid that aren't really of much use when you're an adult, but when you're a kid you feel like an absolute genius? Well, as I was looking outside, I was thinking how I learned from watching my parents gardening that if you lifted a pot or a rock after leaving it there for a while, there'd be some cool creature underneath like a snail or a frog or something else. So lonely 7-year-old me, desperate for some kind of companion, had this great idea. I used to have this plastic outdoor play equipment set that was maybe only about 1.5 meters tall, and it had this detachable slide. Using this as my main tools, I carried out my plan. I took off the slide, dragged it across the garden, and then laid it down on the grass. I then let it sit there for a few nights to allow whatever creatures were gathering underneath to fester. And after a few days, I remember excitedly running over to the slide with a grin on my face. I grabbed the edge of the slide and lifted it up only to find slugs. A crap load of them. Not only that, I also realized that the underbelly of the slide I was holding up was also festering with dozens of slugs. So now that I had a small army of slugs, what did I decide to do? Well, like any dumb 7-year-old, I picked them up and put them into my empty fish tank. Although these slugs were way less cool than little lizards, I still thought they were pretty neat. I actually thought they were so neat that when I had some friends come over to my house after school, I would try to sell them some slugs for like 20 cents each, like some kind of slug dealer. I actually asked my childhood friends about this recently, and they can still remember this happening. Anyway, needless to say, it was pretty obvious that no one was going to pay 20 cents for a pet garden slug, and that my groundbreaking business idea was falling through. So I remember thinking, hey, you know what would be a really good business decision? How about I just sell all of my slug stock to my mum? Now, my memory after this point is pretty foggy, but it probably went something like, hey mum, I've got something to show you. Yes, what do you have to show me? Look at all of my little sluggies. Yeah, she made me leave the whole tank outside in the garden, and it wasn't allowed in the house. So for the people who are worried about the slugs and about what happened to them, I'm glad to tell you that over time they just kind of left the tank on their own, because it never really crossed my mind as a 7-year-old to put a lid on it. I'm so thankful for those little guys for the fond childhood memory. So after that experience, you'd assume that maybe I'd get a little bit smarter, but it was kind of the opposite because this next story shows that I got even more dumb. This one happened when I was maybe about 11 years old. My whole family and I went to some kind of fair, and at the fair there was this man selling yabbies, which are kind of like crayfish, I think. Anyway, I really wanted one, so after some convincing, my dad eventually caved in and gave me some money to spend. We ended up with 2, one for me and one for my brother. Despite them also being a kind of weird pet, they're actually not the main characters for this story. See, we kept my yabbies in a fish tank, which was actually the same fish tank that I'd collected the slugs in years prior. And this fish tank was kept next to the door to our garden. It was summer, and in case you don't know how summer is in Australia, it's pretty brutal. Sometimes it's dry, sometimes it's humid, sometimes there's bushfires, and almost always there's a crap ton of mosquitoes. So these mosquitoes would fly in when we accidentally left the backyard door open, and they would lay their eggs in the water of the yabby tank, which would eventually hatch into mosquito larvae. Our yabbies weren't really interested in them and left them alone for the most part, so my dad gave me the job of scooping out the mosquito larvae into a cup, and then pouring them into another fish tank which had other fish. The reason that we did this was because the fish really seemed to enjoy eating the mosquito larvae. One day, I was doing that fish feeding job for my dad when I decided to look down at the cup of mosquito larvae that I had scooped out. And I remember just staring at the little guys and being like, wait a minute. They kind of look like Caterpie. And they're like kind of really cute. So I decided to scoop out a single mosquito larvae with a spoon and then put it into my little candy box. With this little beauty now in my possession, I decided to put her into this Barbie dollhouse that I had, and I just kind of forgot about her. I guess as an 11-year-old child, I was too busy doing important things like playing Pokemon, daydreaming, playing more Pokemon, and reading manga. Eventually, I was like, wait a second. I feel like I'm forgetting something important. And then I realized, and I was like, oh crap, I forgot about my larvae. I remember rushing over to the dollhouse and having a million thoughts running through my head. Things like, oh my god, I can't believe I forgot. And like, holy crap, I haven't fed her for like 5 days. Not that I even knew what mosquito larvae ate. With shaky hands, I popped open the lid, fully prepared to see my larvae child's dead corpse just floating at the surface of the water. But instead, it was just... I'm not sure what I was expecting to happen when I started to incubate that mosquito larvae, but it sure as hell wasn't for it to turn into a mosquito. Even worse, the mosquito got straight up and just flew into my brother's room. I remember just going to close the door and being like, yeah, I don't want to get bitten tonight. Thanks so much for watching my first YouTube video. I really hope that you liked at least some part of it. If you could, I would really appreciate it if you would take the time to like and comment on this video. And it would also be amazing if you would subscribe to my channel as well. And I'm really hoping to be able to update you guys with more videos every now and then. Thanks so much again for watching, and hopefully I'll see you in the next video. Bye!